Nope, now I've started. Welcome to this week's Network Roundtable. We are starting 2 minutes late because there was like a whole strange twist. The atmosphere was all wrong because we had started early 2 weeks ago and Google was freaking out, all sorts of problems or earlier this week. So we started 2 weeks or 2 hours, 2 minutes to something late. Wow. My brain's fried, apparently. Welcome. It's Friday afternoon, and I have officially been sick for 36 hours. So we are going to be talking about honesty, and that was a pretty honest opening. We've got a number of really great quotes this week, and, of course, 2 amazing guests joining us. Our superhero, Ammon, and his sidekick this week, Bill. And we're going to go ahead and start off having the 2 of you explain why you like to support each other. So let's start with our sidekick. Bill, tell us why you like working with Ammon Johns.
Okay. I met Ammon years ago on a forum on the web, and he kept on answering people's questions. And they'd ask the same questions sometimes every day, and he kept on answering them. And he'd add new twists. He's got a story about how to market slippers that will blow you away because it's the perfect way to market slippers. But he kept on doing that, and I kept on learning from him. And I think he tends to have that effect on a lot of people, where they're going to learn whether they want to or not. It's a good thing.
Yes, I can vouch for that. You're going to learn when you work with Ammon. That's definitely decidedly true.
From my side, Bill is really simple. He's the oldest friend that I've never met. We go back to just a little bit before 2003. It was late 2002 when we were first talking with Kim Krause years ago about maybe starting the forum and moving this group over. And in all the years since, we've never met. And do you know what? It's never mattered. It really hasn't ever mattered. Sure, it'd be great to sit down, have a coffee, or better still, a beer with Bill. But it's never changed the fact that I know this man, I trust this man, and I respect this man. And the fact we've never met doesn't change that. And I think there's a lesson about honesty there itself. That it doesn't have to be started with a handshake. It's not about whether you know how they smell or whether you know how many sugars they take in their coffee. There is a level of honesty and integrity that comes across, even in writing, and you can recognize it. And it's very difficult to define it, but you can recognize it. And in Bill, I recognized it.
Wow. Okay. So we've gotten the openings out of the way. Bill, do you have anything to say to that? There was something in your eye that said he's got a comment that he wants to put out there.
No. You've read my nonverbal communication all wrong.
There you go. So your nonverbal communication was lying, is what you're saying.
There was a typo.
Right.
It was a typo.
There's a book out by a consultant who reads nonverbal cues for people selecting jurors, and she wrote about how you can use techniques to try to understand things that people aren't trying to communicate but just can't help themselves. and say that stuff. And that's the situation you're in as a trial attorney, trying to decide whether or not you should select a person or not. And sometimes people completely misinterpret the nonverbal communication. You think you're selecting somebody who's going to be nice to your client who you're trying to get off on that homicide charge, and they're the ones trying the hardest in the jury room to convict the person. I like hearing about having never met in person, but feeling trust and confidence, and that's what I get. The confidence that Ammon is going to say or do something that's the right thing and handle problems in the right way. In the forums, we had a lot of brushes with people who weren't necessarily tactful, who didn't like hearing some answers very well, who in a different mythology might have been called trolls. Well, maybe this one too. And yet, most of the time, we were able to get them involved, get them talking, get them to, if not at least see some sense, agree to disagree. And that type of confidence is there. I have that, and that's really been important to me. When someone's got your back and they really do have your back, you can't replace that.
Can I just ask a question, probably of both of you, but start with you, Bill? How
Sure.
much of that feeling that someone's got your back and that that you can really trust them, do you think comes from them being comfortable with who they are? Because I think that a lot of times, and we're not going to debate about people who go on forums and say nasty things, but I think a lot of times those people may not be comfortable with who they are, and the way they deal with being uncomfortable with who they are is by attacking other people. And so Ammon mentioned something in the trailer where he talked about being honest with yourself is probably the place to start. And so maybe that's one of the reasons you guys connected so strongly. I don't know. What do you think about that?
There may be a lack of confidence in yourself that may cause people to question other people. I saw a quote from Ammon about the fake it till you make it philosophy doesn't necessarily always really work well. Sometimes people are don't quite understand what they're faking.
Yeah. For me, funny enough, a lot of my honesty comes from, of all things, and I know some people out there will probably laugh at this and think I'm joking, but it comes from a lack of confidence. I question myself constantly, have done all my life, and a lot of my ability to look at situations properly and to see it from enough angles to arrive at the truth is because of that thing of having to look at it from all sides and having to be brutally honest. So sometimes it's the other way around. I think sometimes the people who have too much confidence in themselves are the ones that are the real problem.
My nickname in that forum was braggadocio, and I don't think it was a good choice because when I ended up meeting some people in the forum in person, they had no idea what to call me. But but it was a reminder to myself. I was named after a character in a Renaissance era book. And the character wasn't very nice, but he was very conceited. You know, he liked to brag. That's sort of where that word got that meaning. But it was a reminder to myself to have faith, to have trust, to have some conceit, to say, hey, I know this stuff, I'm right. So I'm sort of coming at that from a different angle completely.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I hear what you're both saying, and confidence might not be the right word. I don't know, because to me, Ammon, when you say that your honesty comes from a lack of confidence, I don't see it that way at all. Because there are plenty of people who ask questions. You know, they are about to do something and there are questions that come in their minds, but their response, instead of being honest and saying I should probably get more information or I should think over this a little more, is to say, no, I decided I'm going to do it and I'm just going to do it. And so that kind of confidence, the confidence which, like Bill is saying, comes not from knowing what you know, but comes from it's just going to happen because I imagined it, doesn't seem to me to be very honest.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're coming back to that whole thing of why self-honesty is the hardest. I put in the comments before this event that one thing I wanted people to think about was that the opposite of honesty isn't lies and it's not deception. The opposite of honesty is fear. And the thing that we fear most is the unknown. So whenever we don't know something, our own minds, including that little amygdala, pesky little thing it is, will try and throw answers at us and certainty at us, because it would rather have that than uncertainty. It would rather not admit it doesn't know. And you will tend to grab an answer and try and make it right rather than try and find the right answer. And of course, there are many, many things in life where there is no right answer. There's your answer.
Right.
And this is particularly apt. Let me bring this right back. This is where it's really apt for businesses online. There is no right answer. The way you're selling your product, if it's right for you, that's great. That can make you happy. But that's not what it's about. The whole thing is you've got thousands of different people tuning in to read your message, hopefully. They're all potential customers. And they are each going to make their own decision on whether this is right or wrong. And all of those perceptions are going to be different. And it's their collective decision that's going to determine whether it works or not. Right, wrong, those are kind of subjective things most of the time. Life is a subjective experience.
As a consultant, I work with a lot of people with different levels of technical knowledge and talent and ability, and often end up getting involved in discussions with them about things that I'm recommending for their website, and being able to recognize and know that the developer probably knows a whole lot more about development and techniques to get something done than I do is a good thing, because I can tell them this is what we want to do, this is why we want to do it, and we need to work towards getting it done. We could try this, and we can try this, and we can try this, or if you can think of something else that achieves that, we can try that too. You know, I think you have to have some awareness that you don't always have the right answer, and there's a lot of potential flexibility towards getting to the goal that you want to get to.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point for me, Bill, which is, do you think that in this lack, I don't want to say lack of honesty because they're doing it on purpose, but a lot of times people don't actually understand what their real goal is. For example, they think that if they do it just like whoever it is that they idolize on social media, then they're going to have the same amount of success as that person. And they haven't realized that they have to do it in a way that's true to them before it's really going to work for them.
I lost a part of what you were saying. I apologize for that. What you started with reminded me of clients I've worked with, small business clients who I sent questionnaires to, asking them lots of questions that upon getting answers back, I also get statements like, we never quite thought of putting together a business plan like this with like all the potential problems we might run into and stuff like that. Thank you for having us fill this form out. We've thought about that stuff now. We probably should have done it a long time ago.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was saying, is a lot of times people don't know what it is that they want their business to become, and so then they're just trying to take someone else's tactics and stick it on their business and be a success when they haven't really defined success for themselves.
Yeah, some people don't make it into business at all. They get frozen by trying to analyze all the possibilities, and so they jump into the deep end of the pool, and there they go.
I think the biggest part for me that plays into that is this. We see a lot on G+, and we see it on blog posts, and we see it on Twitter, and we see it on Facebook, and we see it everywhere. You've got to brand yourself as a thought leader. You've got to be an expert on something. Now, completely wrong. Experts are not influencers. Influencers are not experts. An expert is somebody you go to when you've got a really deep question nobody else can answer on that topic. How many of you have a clue what Stephen Hawking ate for breakfast this morning? There's no question that he's an expert. There's no question that he's a celebrity expert. Everybody in the world knows who he is, but how often do you follow him unless you're interested in learning something about that particular field? We don't. It's that simple. Right now, somebody in the world is considered generally by consensus to be the best automotive engineer in the world. Who is that person? We don't know. We could ask a few people we know and eventually try and work up that chain. But the thing is, experts matter when you need expertise. If you want to have influence, it's not about being an expert. It's about being a friend. It's about being somebody that people turn to. It's about being that guy whose opinion they want, which isn't an expert. And that's one of the areas where a little bit of self-honesty might have helped people waste less time.
I like that. I like that idea of people go to an expert when they need expertise, but that's not necessarily how they're going to form their opinions. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to be an expert to rank for those particular keywords. And that's where that whole myth came from, is that a lot of these were SEO tips that people tried to convert to social media, but they're whole different animals. In one, it's about people, and in the other, it's about search engines. In one, it's about owning a particular context, and in the other, it's about not realizing it's about owning a particular context. And outside of that, you've just lost everybody.
So, Ammon, anytime anyone brings up cars in any way, my brain really focuses on it. We've noticed that a lot on Network Roundtable. So I would say that prior to about 2009, anyone in the know would say the automotive design engineer was Heinrich Fisker. I mean, he made Aston Martin everything it is, and every car they make carries the style and the signature that he originally designed. But he got lost. And his car idea, the Fisker, was, well, quite literally genius. But he was a designer. He wasn't an automotive, exec. And I think a lot of times when we become experts in something, again, back to your point, Ammon, from all the comments leading up to this from here, is we start to lose the perspective of being honest with ourselves. If Heinrich Fisker had been honest with himself, we probably would have had instead of one absolutely the most beautiful car ever invented, the Fisker is hands down nothing is as pretty. But he had one design and it failed. Instead, he could have had 20 designs in the period of time he was messing things up. So I think it's important for us to be that kind of honest with ourselves.
Yeah, obviously, there's some people who would argue with Fisker. Some people would say, "Oh, Ferrari. It's got to be Ferrari." Consistently across the thing. But then again, Ferrari said that the E-Type Jaguar was the most beautiful car he ever saw, the best designed car in the world. So there's always going to be, argument over which expert you follow. Basically, there's always an element to it. But the thing is, even knowing this space, a lot of people, no idea, especially when we get out of design and into the actual engineers. Who's the best automotive engineer? Who knows? Unless you're an engineer, you probably haven't got a clue. And
nor do you care.
The reason I brought this up is that one of the things that PageRank was accused of in the early days is that it's a bit like walking out into the street and asking everybody, who's the greatest scientist that ever lived? And, of course, most people can only think of 3 or 4 scientists. You're going to get Einstein probably right at the top. A few people are going to throw in Newton. You're certainly going to get Stephen Hawking, who we mentioned earlier. You'll get a few other names. Maybe Tesla will be in there. And not for his cars.
He didn't make the cars.
Shh. Don't confuse people.
He's actually not dead. He figured out how to live forever, and we just didn't realize it. Okay, sorry.
But if you asked top scientists themselves who they thought were the best scientists, wow, that's when you start to get really interesting answers, because you get their mentors. And maybe not the ones who succeeded in business, but the ones who taught at universities and raised hundreds of the top scientists. In search, you ask who's a great person in search, and people may say Matt Cutts. Yeah, some people will say Larry Page, and yeah, you have to really be in the space to know John Kleinberg. But that's who they might well cite, and along with lots of others that wouldn't be an obvious choice, but he's right there, and he is one of the fathers of search. He inspired and taught so many of the other people who went on to become leaders in search. Google was doing the Street View thing, and Ask was doing the Ask the Expert thing.
Didn't Kleinberg live a couple blocks away from Sergey and Larry when they were working in the garage in Palo Alto, and used to yell at them, "Hey kids, get off my yard"?
Good man.
Anyone
who yells "get off my lawn" is a good guy by me.
Oh my goodness.
Boy.
Dennis has something there for us.
Yep. I was looking. This is super interesting because I hadn't thought about it in this context. But Cheryl gave us this quote: "Honesty is the first chapter in the Book of Wisdom" by Thomas Jefferson. And thanks so much to our sponsor, Friends Plus Me, for sponsoring this quote. It's true that we often talk about knowledge and experience as the components of wisdom. But going back to what you were saying, Ammon, knowing what you don't know is the key part of being wise, right?
Yeah, and not trying to shoehorn answers where there aren't any. Knowing where there isn't really an answer to this. There's my answer, there's my version of the truth. To understand that there are more perspectives than just our own is absolutely the very first part of wisdom. And a lot of people really can't get out of themselves enough to see those other perspectives. I think therefore.
My father was telling me about expertise once, years ago. And he was an expert in his field. He still is. He told me he's not an expert because he knows everything. He's an expert because he knows more than other people. Yeah, it doesn't qualify you to tell people the right way to do things. It just shows that you've tried a lot of those ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and something else that I find interesting is that as people get further up that scale, as they go deeper into a particular subject area and they get a lot more knowledge, often that's when they get less, it's not necessarily less sure, but it's when they get less didactic and less preachy, if you will, about there being one right way.
Mm-hmm.
The more you learn, the more you realise there is still to learn. Is the version of that. And yeah, I think there is a point at which actually wisdom is almost its own curse. It makes you constantly yearn for more. I think there might be just a smidge of truth somewhere in ignorance is bliss, but thankfully I'm not after that kind of bliss.
When Google came out with the Hummingbird update earlier this year, it was announced on the 15th anniversary of Google's startup as a business. And within hours, a lot of people had published on the web everything you ever needed to know about Hummingbird, even though they had no idea what they were talking about, with the exception of Danny Sullivan, who wrote a frequently asked questions guide to Hummingbird, which no, he's asking questions, but he probably got most of that directly from Google. So it's good information and worth publishing. I had started reading a patent about 4 months before that, and it took me about a month to write a blog post about that patent because it was that much different than anything else they had ever done. And I didn't know how to interpret it. But it fits the definition of what Hummingbird is exactly, a complete rewrite of the search engine. And I think I just hit part 2 earlier today. Without that month of trying to figure out what that patent meant, this one probably would have taken a month to figure out too. I wrote a blog post about it. I didn't use the word hummingbird because I still have reservations, but it is a completely different way of approaching search. And I now know enough not to be standing on my roof yelling that to the skies. Why?
Well, and to me, that's an interesting point, because as we started talking about honesty and the truth, I think someone in the comments said this, but there's a very famous film where someone says, Jack Nicholson, "You can't handle the truth." And so do you think that sometimes what happens is not that the truth scares people, although I think that's true, but that the people who have some information hold back, that they don't share it because they look at people and they say they're not ready or they won't understand this, it's a waste of my time?
Facts, truth, and honesty are 3 different concepts, and it's really difficult for people. A fact is that statistically, the average family has 2.4 children. The truth is, nobody has 0.4 of a child. Honesty is understanding that doesn't matter. What matters is that most people have a family. And it doesn't matter how big it is. And that's kind of where we're going with this. The truth is sometimes a very, very elusive thing. And we may never find truths to an awful lot of things in life. They're only subjective truths. And that doesn't make a difference because life is subjective. What we feel is what's true for us, and what they feel is what's true for them, and what they feel is what's true for them. And they may be 3 completely different things. So understand, truth is that obviously when you reach that situation, well, nobody's got the truth. They've each got their own version. Therefore, unless I can actually prove one of them, which without having to reach for facts that happen to go where I want it to go, there is no truth. There are just 3 versions of truth.
Mm-hmm.
But honesty, they're each being honest. Wisdom is being able to understand that they're all being honest and find the common ground between them.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference between a fact and an opinion?
Wow. Opinion is so often passed
In
off
your
as fact.
opinion.
Facts need to be almost like science. It's got to be something that's replicable. Science isn't science until anyone can try this and get the same results. A fact isn't a fact unless anyone can go out there and find the same thing.
But some of the best science happens when you expect a certain result and it doesn't happen. And you try to understand why.
Yes, that's also how most labs burn down. So I'm not sure it's only the good things that happen there. Having had a science teacher who actually set our lab on fire at school by dropping the phosphorus one day.
Yeah, I have a friend.
Serendipity.
I have a friend whose father created a way to chemically separate explosives, and they had them parts the halves together in a train as they were shipping it across the country, and the train did blow up a small town, so it didn't work well.
So I want to. You were talking about points of view, and Cheryl one night about 2 years ago, and there's been some hints towards this story, but she felt like in the thread it was in this week, Gail Harris's thread, that she couldn't bring it up. But of course, this is Network Roundtable, so everybody sit back and get ready. Our Great Dane was sitting in the living room one day, and the family was all sitting around. We were having a conversation, and so literally we were all the way around, and he was sitting in the middle of the floor, and he was sitting there face towards Cheryl, and Cheryl realized something, that the way he was sitting, she could not tell if he was sitting or if he was taking a dump. Only the person on the other side would be able to actually tell that. Well, there were, most positions off of hers, but and it's kind of become this, there are, she says all the time, there's 360 degrees to any given item. There's actually probably much more than that, but there are 360 points of view, and those points of view can result in what your opinion is going to be, and even the apparent facts that you are able to decipher from a given situation. If you've got the wrong view, it could be crappy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, making any decision from only one viewpoint is just bad practice, and you've always got to do everything you can to get a second and a third and a fourth, and if possible, a fifth, sixth, 10th, 100th point of view to really get an idea of that thing, what it looks like.
Which is why Twitter was created, right?
It's a fact-checking device? Oh, I need to get over there. I didn't realize that. Thank you, Bill. That's why I have it on Twitter.
It's right up there with Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Wait, everything on Wikipedia isn't true?
I'll die to defend your right to say that, and I'm not quoting Voltaire.
Well, it's a very interesting. I mean, I love this idea of you need an extra point of view, but sometimes I think, and this is bringing it back maybe to social media a little more for people who own a business, I think sometimes it's very hard to hold your point of view when you feel like there's this massive evidence, even though it's not evidence, it's not fact, it's opinion, but you feel like, oh my goodness, there's this huge group of people who are all very important and very well respected, and they all say, I should do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that we as business owners can find, I don't want to say a happy medium, but find the path that fits us while still taking what's useful from kind of the prevailing opinion or, the milieu, I'm trying to use a French word, the environment in which we find ourselves, and get those two things to work for us instead of either, yeah, I absolutely have to do what everybody says, or no, I have to be a lone wolf and go it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
by anchoring yourself in the kind of honesty that demands facts, that demands to know, that demands to be able to see it for yourself and not take anybody else's word for it. You know, one of the classic stories around the world, that whole crowd was going on about how wonderful those clothes were because they thought otherwise they'd look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And
let's convert this into curmudgeon for you. Know where your lawn is and how to kick everybody off it, no matter how many there are.
I can't argue with that. I was going to say, you know, if you're an Italian philosopher, and I'm going to butcher his name, Giordano Bruno, who almost got burned at the stake for his beliefs, but he was pretty good. Kepler had this idea that like the Earth revolved around the sun rather than the other way, and he almost got burned at the stake for that one too. Galileo wasn't treated very well by a lot of people with some of the things that he believed in, but he was right like 99 point, much more than the Wikipedia, and sometimes everybody disagrees. Crowdsourcing information supposedly works well when you're trying to figure out how many jelly beans are in a jar. Groups of people tend to get pretty good at guessing correctly, things like that, but they don't always work that well when you're talking about something like an online encyclopedia. Yeah.
Well,
Or the direction of business should potentially travel.
exactly. To me, that was kind of what I was thinking is, yeah, it could be great to have tons and tons of opinions, but if if 90% of the opinions that you have are from people who aren't your client anyway, what kind of value do those opinions have for you? You know, it's kind of like going and asking your mom. She may tell you, depending on your relationship with your mom, yeah, honey, that's great, or boy, that sucks. But neither one's necessarily qualifying her opinion to move your business forward.
Yeah, and you know what we call committee decisions. What do you call a camel? It's a horse designed by committee. The idea of committee decisions is that, you know, it kind of ends up with a thing that none of the experts, nobody wanted this thing,
Right.
but it's the one at which you don't feel anybody else won. That's kind of where it settles, is, well, I didn't get my way, but they didn't get theirs either. Yes!
Right.
So you end up with a terrible product 99% of the time.
And sometimes it works out good. I mean, look at Washington, D.C. People all wanted the capital of the United States. And it ultimately came down to a committee decision to place it in a swampland that nobody wanted. It was a bad decision at first. That quote we had from Thomas Jefferson about books, Jefferson gave up all his books, his complete library, to the Library of Congress because they didn't have one. Nobody was going to ship them one. They couldn't afford one. They had to spend the money on building the building. They didn't have money for books. Finally, a smart man, the guy in charge of the library, said, "We have no money for books. If people want copyrights, they have to send us 2 copies of their book so that we have them, and then we'll give them a copyright." But committees by decision sometimes make bad choices that end up being fortuitous. Not always. If a lot of people are complaining about a problem, you know, that may be a problem worth solving. And sometimes that's a helpful thing to know.
Yeah, well, and the other thing to me is, as an owner, you know, most of our audience members are business owners. And so, yeah, if you're IBM and there's a committee decision that gets made, well, you personally don't necessarily feel 100% responsible for it, which is another reason that decisions get made that way in big organizations. But as a business owner, hopefully all of us feel proud to own our businesses, and we feel like we're providing a service to our clients. And so it becomes more personal, and that's when I think maybe we can get stuck, because we want to help, but we end up taking so many opinions that we don't really know who to listen to, right? Oh, and Dennis, oh, I'm so glad. I love this one. Oh, and it's Alois Bileska that gave us this one. That's not Alois.
Oh, actually, no, it's
That's
not.
Gail.
Gail,
What are you talking about?
yes, I haven't changed her name at the top yet.
So
But
Gail, like that's not.
no.
I'll change it before I send it out.
Eek. Eek. But I mean, I think everyone knows this song, right? But honesty is such a lonely word. Everyone's so untrue. Honesty is hardly ever heard, but mostly what I need from you, and that's a Billy Joel song. But what do you guys think? Do you think? I think a lot of people want to believe this. They want to say, yes, be honest with me. Yes, tell me the truth. But I'm not sure that they're. Again, you can't handle the truth. You know, I'm not sure that they're necessarily ready for it. And so how do we, as a friend or as a mentor or as someone who's, you know, trying to help our fellow business owners, are there some ways that we can present them with an honest opinion without necessarily being brutal? Or do you think there's times when brutality is called for?
There's certainly a lot of times when bluntness is called for. It doesn't have to be brutal, but sometimes sugarcoating that thing, all they're going to do is lick the sugar off and still not swallow the thing. It's one of those things where sometimes you just have to say, look, let's get it over with. It's like yanking off a sticking plaster. You know, the faster it's done, the quicker it's done, the more humane it is, really. Sometimes you need to say, look, here's the truth. Let's face this, then let's look at ways to deal with it.
I'm trying to remember which movie it was with the Jack Nicholson quote, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. Was that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
No, that was the movie he did with Tom Cruise where they were lawyers.
Okay.
I'll have to look up the name. I can't. It escapes me right now. But
the Firm or something like that.
No.
no, it was something else. I'll go look it up. You guys talk amongst yourselves. I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. I bet they'll get this one right.
I think they
A few
probably
good men.
a few good men.
Good men. Yep.
So, one of the things there is that the guy is really trying to justify having his own opinion as the right one. Well, nobody else is in my position. That's certainly one of those sort of dishonest positions that a lot of business owners take. Well, this is my business. Nobody knows my business better than I do. Absolutely right. But nobody at all decides whether your business will be a success or not, but your customers. Not you, not your marketing agency, not your salesman. The only people who decide whether your business is going to make money is the people whose pockets that money is coming out of. And one of the hardest parts of honesty is to understand that we don't have control, we only have responsibility.
And when you place yourself out there as a business, it's great to lead, it's great to be in charge, but you have to understand you're not necessarily in charge. Mm-hmm.
This quote from The Rule Breaker, and I did actually put that in on purpose, because that's what he put, but I'm pretty certain it's Phil. It fits in very well with our conversation. Stephanie, you want to read that?
Sure. The success of most people almost always depends on the favor and good opinions of their neighbors and equals. And without a tolerably regular conduct, those can very seldom be obtained. And that's Adam Smith.
Do you know who he is, Stephanie?
I do. I vaguely heard of him. I'm not.
Finance lady.
Well, and I think that's interesting though, because he talks more about opinions. You know, do people have a favorable opinion of you? I think that might be a little dangerous territory, because then you can fall into the people-pleasing aspect of, you know, I'm not out there making something that's a product I believe in. I'm out there making something that will sell, which I think ultimately does you no favors. But it's when you can make those two things work together. Here's the value I really add, and here's a need that people have. And when I marry those two things together, that's when I can go out and have a product and a company that I'm proud to own and proud to promote.
Funny enough, it's one of those strange things that, again, a lot of people positioning themselves as leaders or the best. Popularity matters a lot in business, but it's not about social media popularity, because a lot of social media popularity is fake. Look, people do an event, 300 people say they're going to go to that event, they plus it and they do the rest, and then the event happens and you had 40 people, 30 of whom made a comment. That's 30 genuines out of 300. Now, sometimes you even get people, and sorry audience, but every HOA host knows it, we get people who say, here, at the start of an event, go off and do other things, and then at the end try and catch a last little bit so they put comment at the end so that we'll think they sat through it all and think better of them. It's a lie. It's dishonest. It doesn't fool us. And if we were basing our thing on that idea of popularity, oh look, lots of people plussing it, it's not genuine popularity. It's, look, notice me, come look at my things and plus me back. Look, I've given you a plus, come plus me. That's not liking.
When I was 13, I overheard a conversation my father was having with a client on the phone, and I got a top MBA from him. But he was telling the client that his company didn't make the kind of product they were looking for, and they probably weren't going to. But one of his competitors did. Here was their phone number. Here was the guy who they should talk to. And they called him back over the years many times, asked for his advice and his suggestions, because it was exactly what they needed. It's got nothing to do with plussing anybody, circling anybody, retweeting them, anything like that. It was an honest interaction in a relationship that was being built.
Well, and I think that's the key, right? Is, do you honestly want to help your client?
Mm-hmm.
And if you honestly want to help your client, then if you see, that someone does something better than you, what's going to help them is to get that other product or service. And it's being honest enough with yourself, I guess, to say, it's okay that I walk away from the sale right now because building a relationship with this person is more important to me than making a quick buck.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story I shared years ago about link building, where I pointed out a day where I was working in a particular part of the city in London, and during one of my lunch breaks I wanted to get a data modem for a mobile phone, back before we had smartphones, and you needed a separate device to be able to really do anything with online. So I went down during my lunch break to a few shops. Now, I actually live near the electronics centre of London, a place called Tottenham Court Road. It's wall-to-wall electronic shops all the way along it. There are over 100 electronics shops. But I'm at my lunch break. I just thought I'd have a look in this other part of town. So I go down, and there's one of the big shops that's in every town and every city in several places. And I asked them. No, it's not mainstream enough for them. The salesman sort of really tries to get me to order one. No, I'm just, if you had it in my lunch break, fine. If you haven't got it, I'm just going to wait till the weekend. I don't want you to order something it's going to take 2 weeks when I'm going to buy it at the weekend if you don't have it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He had real trouble understanding that, was trying too hard to get his commission. Okay. Asked about other places. He had no suggestions whatsoever. In a high street with 5 other electronic shops, he had no idea where I could possibly look for one. So I went along a couple of shops down, another big chain. It's technically a sister company, but they were a little bit different. This one Apologised for not having it. They did say they could order one. I explained that, you know, I'm looking for it now. And they referred me back to the first shop, which, you know, was one they have a relationship with. Not very helpful. Okay. So that's equivalent of a paid link. I'll get back to that. I go further down the road. Very small little shop that I've never seen anywhere else. You know, this is one of these proprietor owner shops. I walk in there. The guy doesn't have one. But at least this one knows what the hell I'm on about. And he said, you know, I really don't know where you'd find one. But you could try down the road and around the corner. He's got a lot of stuff that's more on that kind of end. So you could try that. No attempt to try and get me to sign up for one or anything else. Sent me to another shop that he hasn't got a relationship with. Went to that fourth shop. They had what I wanted. Wonderful. Bought it. Now, the first shop was trying too hard to get the sale. It was all that whole thing of never let the audience leave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, never provide a link out used to be the thing on websites. Oh, don't link to anybody else. You don't want them to walk away. Somehow they're going to forget there's any other shop in the world, and you know, once they're on ours, they're completely unable to remember there are other shops on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolute idiocy. Don't fall into that kind of self-dishonesty. You know, this is where honesty comes in. The second shop don't have it. They want to get the sale, but they're not quite as stupid as the first one. But unfortunately, the only link they're going to send me is their paid link, the other company they're affiliated with. Doesn't help me. Again, they haven't lost a sale because they never had the sale because they don't stock this thing. This is a sale they couldn't get, but what they had the chance to do was give me a good experience. They failed. Third shop got it. He gave me a link to a place that did have it. Now, I couldn't buy anything from him that day. He didn't have what I wanted. But over the next 6 months, I went to that shop. I bought a printer. I bought dozens of other things, hundreds of pounds worth of business, because that was the guy I knew I could trust. That was the guy who was more interested in serving me than selling me. And that is where honesty pays bucks.
Well, and I think it's very hard. Again, when you look at, you know, here's how you do it, and 7 tips for, and 3 tips for, and everybody thinks that it's some kind of formula, and all you have to do is follow step A, B, and C, and then you're just going to be rich. And that's part of where knowing what you want before you get in contact with a client, to me, is super important. Because if your goal is to make as much money as you can, as quickly as you can, that's very different than building a business that puts you in a position to help people throughout the life of their business or throughout their lives, depending on, you know, what you offer them. If you want a commodity, then there's a different way to approach that than there is to approach a relationship-based business. But I really think that most people who are here on the Plus are looking for the second. At least that's what they're professing to look for. That's why they're here. And I think it's hard when you get these distractions with these commodity-type approaches that say, oh, but all you have to do is send out 10,000 invitations, and then all of a sudden, you know, the numbers say you'll get 1,000 people, or, you know, you'll get 100 people, and that's all that matters.
I have an uncle. Let's call him Tom. His name was Eugene, but
okay, you just hit him for sure. Nobody will find this guy now.
He told every girl he met a different name. So the one he ended up marrying, he told her his name was Tom. So as a kid, I was confused. My Uncle Gene was Uncle Tom. Was Uncle Gene. It made no sense. So his son's named Tom Jr.
Tom Jr., son of Eugene. I like it.
That's honesty for you.
It's it's one of those things that I've never quite understood why people lie in a relationship, because the only person you're cheating there is yourself. And this is that thing about fear. The opposite of honesty is fear. I'm afraid they won't like me. I'm afraid to put myself out there and get rejected. So I'm going to put up this falsehood. I'm going to put up this thing that's easy for them to say yes to. And if they don't, it wasn't the real me that got turned down anyway. But here's the flip side of that that's really obvious. If they don't turn you down, they're now not in a relationship with you at all. They don't know you. The only way you can absolutely guarantee that you cannot have this relationship is to not be you in the first place. And if you're not being yourself, everything you get is nothing you own.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, that's the saddest part of that whole thing is if it works, right? So you lie and it all works the way you want it to, then you have to maintain it. Because then they're not in love with you, they're in love with this thing you've created. And so then it just gets worse and worse, right? And I think it's the same in business. You know, and we've already hammered on this a million times, but that's why it's so important to be who you are and to know that you'll attract the people that identify with that, instead of saying, well, I have to be something that works for absolutely everybody because I need to have 6 million clients. Be realistic. You can't handle 6 million clients. What are you going to do with all those clients? So narrow your range of vision a little bit and try to attract people that you can interact with on a comfortable level, you know, being yourself.
Yeah, what we tend to say, Bill and I, both of us, when people are saying, well, my business applies to anything, okay, what's your ideal customer? Picture that person. Instead of trying to sell to everybody you could sell to, think of the person who most needs you or who you can best connect with and sell to them, and the others will work it out from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, consistency is a big part.
Who is it you want to work with? I built a website for a friend who's a lawyer, and he finally came to me one day and said, Bill, I don't like divorces. I don't want to help people get divorced. I said, no problem. We'll take that page off your website. What do you want to help people with? We'll put that one on the website. Estate law. You know, I like when people pass away, making sure that all the things they wanted to give to certain people, those people get those things. So, no problem. Be up in half an hour. Yeah. Yes, yeah. It's what he wanted to actually really do.
You know, in '96, when I was running my roofing company, I had put in a full page, yellow page ad. This is when they actually worked. And, you know, it was like everybody else's, you know, call Roofix, this is what we do. You know, I didn't do this, but every roofer, go check it. Every roofer is an expert in, and then they have a list of things that if you know anything about roofing have nothing to do with each other, and it's completely impossible. Anyway, so, but at least, you know, it was a very typical picture of a roof, yada, yada, yada. And I got bombarded all year long with a ton of calls because, well, the name of my company was Roofix, and all we did was repair work. And so I was getting all these calls from people who wanted re-roofs. Well, I didn't do them. So, you know, I did have a relationship with someone who did, and I referred them over to them. But it was annoying. So the next year, I still ran a full-page ad. But instead, I wrote it like a magazine article. 2 columns, because it was a smaller book. It was only this big, not the larger ones everyone else is used to. 2 columns, headers, and I explained the value of repair over re-roofing. No pictures anywhere. Not even my logo was actually on it. It looked like a magazine ad, which is really bizarre in a yellow page. My calls went down by about 40%. My income doubled that year. Everyone who called was calling for what we did. And you know, I use that as an example a lot of times for online marketing. You've got to be honest in your approach so that you attract the people that you really want to do business with. You want to go over the stats from this week's questionnaire?
Ooh, let's do them quick then.
Okay, we're going to do them quick. Here we go. Oh my gosh, we're already over.
Are you surprised, honestly, Dennis?
Oh, no, not at all. Oh, yay, we're over. Last week, we actually went over by 16 minutes, so let's see if we can be faster than that. So on the question of synonyms, we had a massive control with the word integrity. That was 8 out of all of the answers that we had there, with only 5 answering anything else. So somehow this thing's doing the math wrong, because that's more.
Yeah, the percentages are way off there.
Yeah.
That's 50%. That's not
8 of 13, right.
Yeah, so we'll look at the number of answers. I don't know. Google messed up on the math there. All right. Any surprise there by anyone on the panel?
No, but I'm one of the candor votes.
Are you really one of the 2 candor votes? Okay, so why candor?
For me, that's more at the core of what I mean by honesty. Integrity can be another thing. People can lie for good reasons. People can tell people the lie they need to hear. People can lie to protect others. That's integrity.
Okay.
But it's not honesty. So that's why. Integrity can include situations where you would lie. Candor, no.
Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this before we move to the next one? Okay. So here we are on the antonyms. Falsehood came in. We didn't have fear up here. And I don't think we would have gotten more than 1 answer on fear without your explanation. What would be really interesting is to see, if we had done it, would be to see how people would change their answers given the opportunity with the show over.
Well, there you go. Anyone in the audience who would change now, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, in the comments, if you would not have answered fear, but now you would, we'd like to hear it. And if you would not have answered fear, but you still won't answer fear even after Ammon's explanation, we'd like to hear that. And Ammon will not write a really mean blog post about you for doing it.
Says who?
Says me. Oh wait, you can't see me.
Yeah. Did you get the disclaimer, Dennis? Remember we talked about that? We need the ticker on the bottom that runs the disclaimer.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then honesty in business. This is interesting to me that there were such a high 5 and then a number of 3s and no 4s. I would have thought this would have been a lower number of 5s and more 4s. Because, well, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there and say this, but I think that answering 5, probably questionable whether or not you were actually honest. I'm just saying.
If you haven't done something this year that you know could have lost you your job, but you did it anyway and you didn't try to hide it, you probably shouldn't be answering 5.
Yeah.
But do you think that corresponds, Dennis, to the perception of honesty as integrity as opposed to candor?
Oh.
And I think that might be the link is people, and again, we're not 100% honest with ourselves, I'm sure, but we all want to believe that we're acting with integrity.
Ammon, you were the one that brought up that difference, so I'm redirecting that. I'm regifting that question.
I think that number is high, and I think if you instead said, right, who has never padded a reference or a relationship, you know, yeah, we worked with this company once. Oh, we worked with this company. We've got lots of experience in this. Yeah, you did half an hour, but on your page that will say you work with this company. Are there lies by omission? Are you steering people towards an implication without stating it? You know, there's a lot of other forms of honesty than just truth and lie. There's a whole lot of grey in the middle, and honesty, it's a bit more I am bluntly honest to the point where I have, I will stand up and lose clients if need be when something needs to be said. And the difference is that I do that mindfully and knowing that that's the consequences. That's why in a blog post this week, I did leave comments open and I was expecting criticism. I got a lot less than I was expecting, but it's there because that's your right of reply. That's honesty, is expecting that and dealing with that and being prepared to say, yeah, here I am.
Mm-hmm.
So FYI, this brings up why I specifically wore this hat today for Ammon, because I thought about wearing my all-black hat, and I thought, well, that's rude since he's an SEO. And then I thought about wearing my all-white hat, and I thought, well, the show's on honesty. So, yeah, this is my honest white hat, black hat. Sorry, I cracked myself up. Okay, so back over here, quotes. There were a few of those. We had a lot of people answering. We really appreciate that. Here's our conversation, our ongoing conversation on movement. We're at a 6-6 tie with evolution and progress. And go ahead and answer this every week if you want to. We're trying to see if, as the season moves on, some of your answers change. It's not a required question, so feel free to not answer it as well if you want. And then here's the learning from last week, which has changed slightly, and enlightenment is still ahead, but it's close between enlightenment and information. And it's going to be interesting to see, seeing that those two are so close, see what happens as the season moves on with that learning one. And here's our jump in responses. So we appreciate you guys filling this out. It's helpful for us. I think some of you really enjoy it, and so we love you engaging.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
All right. Can I jump in with a quote of my own on honesty?
Absolutely. Jump in.
Okay, a guy I used to work with once told me, I like being honest because that means there are less stories for me to remember.
That's a good one.
Uh-huh.
And very true. Okay.
True.
So we're going to close down. I don't know, Stephanie, did you have a chance to explain how we close this? I'm not sure that we did in the green room. Kind of a short green room.
We were busy in the green room.
Yeah, so here's how this is going to work. Stephanie's going to take a minute or two to give her closing thoughts on today's topic of honesty, and then she has a second to promote anything that she wants to promote. Ammon will be next, and then Bill, and I'm going to take out our show at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephanie.
Well, I think there's lots of takeaways from today. I don't know which one's the most important. I'm going to have to think about that and put it in the comments. But something that I really am glad that we got a chance to talk about is this notion of honesty being a way to check in with yourself before you go out and try to present something to other people. And to me, that's one of the things I've been focused on lately, is really understanding what it is that you want, what it is that you're trying to achieve with your business, so that then you can set things up so that they work that way. Because if what you want to have is you want to have nameless, faceless clients, like we said earlier, there's a way to approach that and make that happen. But if what you really want is a deep relationship with your clients and you want them to work with you for a long time, that's a very different approach. So, be honest with yourself. And either is okay. I think that's the other thing we maybe didn't say during the show. There's not a right or wrong. There's just what's right for you. So hopefully you guys will tell me what you got out of it too in the comments, I'm sure. But that's what I got out of today's discussion. And I did want to say thank you so much to Ammon and to Bill for being here. And you guys knew what you were getting into. We run long, we start late. That's the way it goes. Sorry. But in terms of things to promote, I will be announcing some workshops that I'm very excited about in a couple of weeks. So if any of you are looking for a little bit of help and trying to get some clarity on how you can manage your business to build value, be on the lookout for that.
Cool. Well, what I got out of this is, as always, a great conversation, and as always, one that's just started. So I'll be dipping into the comments later and seeing where it goes as well, because a conversation doesn't really finish. As long as it's ticking over in your mind, it's still open. And I'm hoping that this is a conversation that will go on for a few months in various places, in various iterations. Where you can catch me is, of course, on Ammonize this Sunday with Chris Vogelman again doing the follow-up, and every Tuesday on Isuzi. So that's mine. Bill?
I didn't know what to expect from this hangout, but I'm pleasantly surprised. The hour of the hangout threw me a little bit because I tend to have a hard time remembering rounded hours like o'clocks and something 30s and so on. So, but other than that, the fact that you have some structured questions on an ongoing basis for people in the community, it's a wonderful way to build community. Yeah, the notion of picking specific topics, I think that's really, that don't necessarily rely upon an expertise in a particular field, but can apply to everybody who interacts with clients as a business person. I think it's really helpful to hear other people's opinions and participate in a discussion, whether you're on air or in comments. I'll be traveling over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be in New York next week at SMX East, talking about. Danny Sullivan gave the session a name that reminds me of a Prince album or other 80s funk band from long ago.
Is it just a squiggle?
Hummingbird and the Entity Revolution. So I'm going to get up on the stage, and he's the moderator for the session, so I'm going to ask where the soundtrack music is.
Yeah, you want T-Rex, Children of the Revolution. That's what you...
Oh, absolutely. A little T-Rex is perfect for that.
Demand that music as you walk up to the stage.
The mega drum, right. The next week I'm going to be at PubCon in Las Vegas, where I'll be talking about Hummingbird and the Entity Revolution. It doesn't have quite as catchy a name, actually, but it's on the same topic. So, you know, search engines are changing. They're showing different things. They're actually getting involved in like showing facts instead of just web pages that are based upon opinions or providing services or doing things like that. They're
Well, sometimes
working...
it's facts, sometimes it's Wikipedia.
Right. We do have to make that distinction. They are weaning their way off of only Wikipedia, though. So it's good to see that. And I get a new hint every week about Hummingbird being something different. So I'm going to ignore all those experts who came out with opinions on what Hummingbird was within the half hour after it was announced by Google, because it's not quite what they said it was, but at least nobody's going around saying it's based on hidden Markov models or heavily complicated math like that, which is a precise way of talking and telling people nothing. So thank you all. Appreciated the hangout.
All right, Bill, Ammon, thank you so much for joining us this week. Really, it was a fantastic hour and whatever, 16 minutes. And yeah, Bill, the time is semi on purpose, just to help people to understand they're not really in for typical anything when they come to Network Roundtable. So next week is fall break for Network Roundtable. We will not be on Friday. Stephanie and I are going to be at this exact time working on something
Super secret special. Shh.
for all of you. Super secret special. And but I do want to promote that we have the first Codebreakers HOA on Wednesday. Codebreakers is a brand new team that I would say Ammon and I brought together. And we've got a lot of really interesting people. You'll get to see who's on the team over time as we roll out. We're going to have a rotating panel of co-hosts. And what we're going to be doing is breaking down why different things went viral. This week, Grumpy Cat. Yeah, we're going to break down Grumpy Cat on Wednesday at 10:02 Mountain Time. It's hopefully going to be a 40-minute show. And also, I do want to point out it's Ammon's birthday. Happy birthday, Ammon.
Yep. Another year without dying. Whee!
Yeah, way to go. Way to keep kicking, Ammon.
It's an excuse for a Chinese takeaway that night. That's the thing.
There you go. All right, so we will see you all in 2 weeks where we're going to tackle the other difficult word from the season of movement. 2 weeks, it's going to be humility. And we have David Amerland coming on, and I really can't think of anybody better to be talking about the word humility with us. So, looking forward to that, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks. Bye.